Municipalities in the state, including Bangor, Bar Harbor, and Rockland, have banned the sale of flavored tobacco products.
Supporters of a bill before lawmakers in Augusta say it's time to make it a statewide ban, but opponents say that will hurt the economy.
Kadichi Lawrence has more.
Two opposing groups gathered at the State House with one bill in mind, an act to end the sale of flavored tobacco products. Peter Brennan, Executive Director of New England Convenience Store and Energy Marketers Association, led the group against the bill. He says ending the sale of flavored tobacco would not only be detrimental to the economy, but adults should be able to make their own choices.
The law is very clear that you have to be 21 to purchase tobacco products in Maine. All of our retailers follow that law. All of our retailers are well trained so that they don't sell to anybody that's under 21. They card anybody that looks like they're under 30.
He says they're trying to prevent Maine from making the same mistakes Massachusetts did when they became the first state to restrict the sale of all flavored tobacco products, including menthol cigarettes, in 2019.
I can tell you that in Massachusetts, the first year after the ban went into effect, we lost something like $130 million in tax revenue. That's just increased since then, and all that revenue went to our surrounding states. In Maine, I think the estimate is somewhere between 25 and 30 million.
State Senator Jill Dusson spoke in favor of the bill and says flavored tobacco targets marginalized groups, including youth who may already feel disconnected, anxious, and hopeless.
This means kids who are experiencing mental health conditions, kids who identify as LGBTQIA+, kids who are from families with lower incomes, and kids just being kids.
Julia Ryan, a student at Bonnie Eagle High School, says she's seen the effect of addiction in her peers, and although it is illegal for underage kids to purchase the products, they still get them.
I'm not even sure how most kids get it, but every week there's something new that I see in people's hands in the bathroom or just hanging around at the mall. If I go to the mall and there's people just holding it in their hands, and I'm like, they're 15 years old. How are they getting this?
They say lawmakers need to act now.
The tobacco companies definitely know what they're doing, making these flavored products and making these devices that are sleek, that look new, that look interesting. It's appealing to kids my age. It makes them maybe even feel like they're cool, but obviously smoking and using these tobacco products is not cool.
Kadichi Lawrence, WABI TV5 News, Augusta.